Today what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to talk about human resource management, the human resources function, how it relates to the payroll function, how they interact with each other, and where the payroll function kind of fits in to the human resources process. We'll start out kind of watching this this little video just to break things up. And we'll talk about we'll look at the slides on human resources. We have another video about how to run payroll. I'll tell you a little bit about why I like this video after we've had a chance to watch it. And then we're going to look in detail at the employee earnings report and the payroll register, because these are the reports that you're going to become really familiar with throughout the semester, and you're going to be using them in order to generate other types of reports and generate the information that you need in order to do your homework. So let's start out. We're going to look at this one first.
Resource management is the process through which a company identifies, recruits, hires, positions, and manages its employees. Human resources departments usually formulate, enforce, and oversee the company's HR policies, which control personnel and how the company interacts with its staff. First, let's define HRM. Human resource management is an approach to running a business that views its workforce as its most valuable resource. The term human capital describes a company's workforce value. HRM's primary purpose is to help businesses meet their immediate and long-term objectives by reducing risk and increasing ROI. Nature of HRM. Human resource management is founded on guiding concepts and practices that help businesses succeed. HRM is not limited to an organization's single division, but serves as a cross-departmental role that oversees the management of all employees, from entry-level workers to executives. Human resource management revolves around its most valuable asset, its employees. HRM is a field that focuses on helping people both professionally and personally. This facilitates cooperation between members of an organization to realize shared objectives. To keep up with the ever-shifting market and fiercer levels of competition, all production elements must be constantly updated and enhanced. Human resources, too, must be consistently upgraded or replaced to keep up with rising levels of competitiveness. As a result, it's something that goes on all the time. It is an essential component of running a business. It has as its primary goal the maximization of output by employees. It seeks to maximize productivity by focusing on the people who make the organization tick. Scope of HRM. The term human resource management scope describes the full range of HRM-related pursuits. The following describes these pursuits. Human resource planning, also known as HR planning, is a method used by businesses to determine how many open positions there are inside the organization and whether or not there is an abundance or deficiency of available employees. Job analysis is a crucial part of HRM. A job analysis provides an in-depth explanation of each position in the business. The company creates ads and places them in newspapers based on the results of a job study. This is the process of seeking potential employees. Recruitment and selection is a crucial part of human resource management. It involves receiving applications in response to an advertisement, conducting interviews, and ultimately choosing the best candidate for the job. After a candidate pool has been narrowed down, an initiation or orientation session might be held. Aside from its significance, this aspect of HRM is also worth discussing. During this time, employees are also introduced to one another, given a brief history of the company, and given information about the company's culture, values, and work ethics. Each worker participates in a training program designed to improve his work productivity. Existing, highly experienced staff members are also offered training. Refresher courses are designed to do just that. A lot of money is allocated to training and development programs at the organization. After an employee has been on the job for about a year, the HR department will conduct a performance review to evaluate how well they've been doing their job. Pay raises, bonuses, and promotions in the future are all determined by these evaluations. Compensation and other perks are subject to several different sets of regulations. Human Resources oversees salaries and benefits packages. Maintaining a healthy workforce requires a consistent dose of inspiration. The Human Resources Division is responsible for exploring alternative techniques of inspiration. As an aside, health and safety rules must be adhered to for the sake of the staff. Human Resources is also responsible for this. The HRM discipline of keeping cordial connections with union members is also crucial. The corporation will benefit from this since it will reduce the likelihood of strike-related lockouts. Importance of HRM. It's common knowledge that a company's human resources are its most valuable and most troublesome asset to manage. Human resource management's goals include identifying staffing gaps and developing and retaining top talent. It's important to note the breadth of HRM's purview, so it's tough to pin down a single definition, but we can put them in one of the following categories. HRM relates to employee administration, workforce planning, recruiting and selection, development, introduction and orientation, promotion, remuneration, layoff and reduction, and employee output are all examples of direct human resource management. The larger goal here is to measure personal progress and efficiency, both of which have knock-on effects on the growth of the business. HRM's role in employee benefits. This subfield of HRM is concerned with workplace perks and comforts. Security assistance, healthcare, welfare benefits, social welfare, and health services are only a few of the many facets of this umbrella term. Appointing safety officers and improving and protecting against unsafe working conditions are also addressed. It is also connected to staff management, guidance and counseling, report building, and training and development. It ensures the well-being of your workforce. It is essential to identify their genuine requirements and work with management to provide for those needs. HRM and workforce development, maintaining internal peace and harmony necessitates tactful engagement with labor or employee unions, hearing out their concerns and finding amicable resolutions to any issues that may arise. It's the study of how to get along with your coworkers and keep the peace in the workplace through collective bargaining, amicable conflict resolution, and other methods of preserving positive employee-employer relationships. How does HRM work? Human resources are effective because of the hard work of HR specialists who study human resource management before hiring. While a single or small team may handle human resources at a small business, a large corporation would have a dedicated HR division complete with a chief people's officer, HR director, and other administrative positions. Similarly, small and medium-sized businesses, SMBs, can rely on HR generalists to oversee all aspects of the employee life cycle, including hiring, payroll, performance reviews, and the creation of corporate rules. In contrast, large companies typically have experts, each taking on a specific task. Each area is separated so that just the correct number of workers may be sent out to meet each requirement. Objectives of HRM. The HR process begins at the top. The successful completion of organizational goals is a primary HRM focus. To succeed, HRM must ensure that all available human resources are used to meet organizational needs and aims. HRM success and goal attainment hinge on two primary considerations: employees and the workplace. Human resource management and organizational effectiveness are primarily defined by workplace culture. Facilitating effective team coordination is a crucial function of human resource management. Enterprise-level teams require simple methods of communication. Specifically, HR needs to ensure a tool is available to help with the integration. Workforce effectiveness and performance are two fundamental factors to focus on to accomplish even the most fundamental goals of any firm. When employers invest in their employees by providing ongoing training and career advancement chances, those workers feel secure in their jobs and more prepared to take on leadership roles. Human resources professionals' primary role is to maintain progress along the desired course. Don't let negative energy or distractions interrupt your focus. This requires constant attention and encouragement from the workers. Where can HR find inspiration to excite their staff? Provide them with abilities. Consider their point of view. Make weekly meetings and decisions inclusive. If they are new, it doesn't matter. Accept them. Never let morale dip. Rewards for employees, such as annual reviews based on performance, can also be beneficial. Human resource managers have many goals and responsibilities, including developing leaders, creating a safe and welcoming workplace, and keeping current staff members. An essential goal of human resource management should be the maintenance of a happy and productive workforce. Compliance and data management for the corporation and its employees are two examples of functional and organizational goals. It's a significant task for HR departments and managers to manage payroll compliances and maintain the organization free of penalties and fines. Skills and responsibilities of an HR manager. The human resources manager oversees the company's hiring practices, payroll, employee benefits, and any efforts related to employee safety in the workplace. The HR manager is responsible for the administration of employee benefit programs, as well as the sourcing, screening, and hiring of new personnel. A human resources manager's job description should emphasize the importance of a candidate with excellent interpersonal, communicative, and collaborative abilities due to the role's emphasis on dealing with people. It's also crucial that they have a thorough familiarity with the most recent trends in the sector about non-monetary perks and complete awareness of the most recent accolades in the field. In this position, education plays a crucial part. Human resources experience is preferred, coupled with at least a bachelor's degree in HR or related subjects such as business. What's with the fancy human resource management title anyway? The term management describes making the most of a company's limited resources to achieve its goals. Therefore, human resource management aims to ensure that the business's existing human resources are used effectively and that any recruits add value to the organization. The construction industry is the best example of a sector experiencing a severe scarcity of competent laborers. According to analysts, this trend is predicted to triple over the coming generation from its current 30%, negatively affecting the sector's total productivity. Many experts argue that human resources are becoming less important as machines and technology take over more and more tasks. Companies are always looking for talented, knowledgeable, and certified people to ensure the company's continued growth and success. Still, machinery and technology can only be created by humans and require human intervention to function properly. For what reasons should an HRMS be implemented? Human resource management systems are built to cater to HR's fundamental requirements and transform routine administrative tasks into strategic enablers of company value. These data-driven, people-centric tools can help HR professionals do the following: strengthen their procedures for employing new employees, improve your personnel management skills, maximize the efficiency of your personnel, achieve higher levels of employee participation and retention, reduce unnecessary expenditures, use evidence to guide your choices, guarantee conformity with applicable rules and regulations. Cloud transformation. Human resource specialists have risen to prominence in the C-suite because of HR's critical role in ensuring the firm's continued viability, both today and in the future. With improved familiarity with digital and cloud-based technologies, they will be better equipped to make immediate contributions toward the development and upkeep of a highly efficient workplace tomorrow via cloud-based HR management tools. Human resources must upgrade and transform to keep up with the times and meet the needs of the business. A crucial part of HR's change agent role is ensuring the department uses a cloud-based human resource management system, HRMS, to oversee all aspects of the employees' careers. Okay, that's all I have for you folks. I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video.
I appreciate you taking the time as well. So, human resources, human, obviously, is people, and resources are an asset. So the assets of the organization, and human resources manages that human asset of the organization throughout the life cycle of the employee. And by that I mean right from when an employee is hired throughout their tenure at the organization, right up through their termination, whether it be voluntary or involuntary. So every step of the way, human resources is there to manage those assets of the organization. Now, payroll fits in because we are providing one of the big benefits, the main benefit, for those employees. The reason, in fact, that most of them are even employees, providing their compensation and helping to manage that compensation. So because that is such a big part of the whole life cycle of the employee, the payroll department is intricately involved with the human resources department in helping to manage those assets and provide the benefits that employees are there for. Has anybody ever taken a job not because of the money? Just because you wanted to spend your free time doing something for somebody else?
Well, okay. Well, I'm different because I'm a lover, so it's a little different. So I do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And don't think about the money.
And you don't think about.
I just like helping people.
Well, that is wonderful. It's very altruistic.
Yeah. Smart.
A lot of us we'll do that through some sort of volunteer work, some other type of charitable function. But for most of us, we have a job because we've got bills to pay and we need that compensation in order to maintain whatever lifestyle it is that we have chosen. And so obviously the payroll function is extremely important to employees and works very closely with the human resources department. The video that we just saw mainly focused on mid and large sized organizations. So what you'll find in those mid and large size organizations is this human resources system. So a whole system put in place with a team of people that then manages that human resource. And like I said, it goes through the whole life cycle of the employees, starting with procedures for recruiting employees, so bringing employees into the organization, selecting which employees we want in which locations within the organization, orienting them. So orienting being a little bit different from training. Orienting being, when somebody first starts, getting them accustomed to what the culture is of that organization. Each organization has its own culture, its own way of doing things. Different from how do I do this particular job, but how does the organization function? So that's where the orienting would come in, and human resources is in charge of that orientation process. As well as ongoing training. Now, the ongoing training could be provided by human resources, could be provided by individual departments, depending upon whether it's focused on the area that individual is working in. For example, if you're working in an accounting department, continuing training may be provided by the accounting department if they want you to become familiar with QuickBooks, or they want you to become familiar with some different software. Yeah.
Alright, so payroll accountants need to understand a lot about HR, but HR doesn't need to understand a lot about payroll.
Well, HR is more of a generalist.
Yeah.
Right? It's more of a generalist type of area. They're not they may be familiar with payroll, and they need to have a basic understanding of how that works, but payroll is a specialized area within that. Right, exactly. And some would argue it's probably the most important specialized area within human resources. So ongoing training, like I said, it could be provided by HR, like if it's training about the organization. Maybe the whole organization is gonna change its structure, right? They're gonna add some different layers of administration or take out some layers, and employees need to have an idea of what that change looks like. That would be training that might be provided by HR, as opposed to job-specific training, which would probably be provided by the department itself. So like I said, if the accounting department implements a new accounting software, that's training that would be provided then by the accounting department or organized by the accounting department, not necessarily by HR. Right through termination of personnel. And termination, that's such a negative word, but that could be voluntary or involuntary termination. It could be retirement. But there's a whole process and procedure that has to take place when an employee leaves their employment, and human resources is in charge of that. So before the payroll department can even pay a newly hired employee, they need to be informed of the fact that there is a new employee, right? So what happens is the human resource will process employees, get them started, have them fill out the proper paperwork, the W-4 forms and I-9 forms, and don't worry, I'm going to throw these terms out. I don't expect you necessarily to know them at this point. We're just getting started. But have those employees get started in the process, and then the payroll department will get information on those new employees, things like what's their name, what's their social security number, what's their address, because we're going to have to mail them items. We're going to need to know where they live. We're going to need to know what jurisdiction they live in to tax them properly. We're going to have to enter, payroll department's going to have to enter in tax information to determine how much withholding the employee is required to contribute. Information about, are they going to receive benefits? Are they going to take the health insurance? Are they going to participate in the retirement plan? All of that information then gets sent over to the payroll department after the employee has been hired, so that the payroll department can enter that into the system, so that when the time comes to pay that employee, all that information is there. So payroll would be involved in the initial onboarding of an employee in that they would need to get them into that payroll system. And then payroll is also going to be involved in the continuing life cycle of the employee every time that employee gets paid. Every time that employee needs to be issued a W-2 form. You know, every time an employee decides that they've had some life event that's going to change their benefits or their tax situation. So payroll stays involved with that employee as well right through the termination, because upon an employee's termination, there's certain things that the payroll department has to process. They've got to, maybe they may live in a state that requires employees be paid immediately upon termination. There are states like that. Iowa's not one of them. In Iowa, if you leave your job, you just get paid your last paycheck on the regular schedule. But there are some states where you leave your job, you have to get paid that day. And so payroll has to get involved in that procedure as well with the termination. So other things that I'm kind of jumping around between, you know, payroll and human resources here, but other things that human resources would be involved in, not the payroll department, putting together job descriptions. So job descriptions would be, it's kind of self-explanatory, but those job descriptions are really important to have and to keep updated so that when hiring takes place, you're hiring people who can perform those functions and fit those job descriptions. They need to be accurate. They have to have been prepared before the job was advertised or before the interviewing began. You can't create a job description that is specific to an individual. It has to be specific to the job, not a particular individual. So that's why it needs to be prepared. And those job descriptions would be updated regularly by the Human Resources Department in conjunction with the department that oversees that job. Because, you know, if it's, let's say again, it's the accounting department and they need a bookkeeper, Human Resources isn't necessarily going to know what the accurate job description would be for a bookkeeper. So the accounting department would work in conjunction with the Human Resources Department to keep those job descriptions updated. Another form that's used by Human Resources, this requisition for personnel. Those generally, that would come from the department that needs the employee. I'll go back to accounting. If we need a bookkeeper, we would our accounting department would then contact the Human Resources Department, send them a requisition, say, hey, we need to hire a bookkeeper. So you need to get the process started to advertise, to start the recruiting process, get the interviewing process started. That requisition for personnel gets the ball rolling for a new hire. So Human Resources would be in charge of doing that as well. Let's see, there's a bunch of activities here I want to skip over. A couple other things that Human Resources would be in charge of. Putting together the applications for employment. So most of you have probably filled out an application for employment before, yeah? What type of information is contained in that application?
Demographics.
What's that?
Demographics.
Well,
No, all mine have the ones I filled out.
so what type of demographic information?
I thought that was like, whether you're a race and stuff like that, or that's not what that is?
Well,
I thought
so
it was-
employers have very limited ability to ask that type of information,
Really?
legally speaking, unless it directly pertains to the job. Unless it is required for the position. So for example, gender.
Wow.
They can ask what your gender is if the position is specific to somebody of that gender. Like if you're gonna be a locker room attendant at a gym or something, that's something that's probably gonna be specific to the particular gender of that locker room, so they can narrow it down. But asking things about, background, race, religion, creed, all of that stuff is generally prohibited unless it pertains to the actual job description. I can't imagine a time when that would be really, that would be a really specific job that would require that. So employers are very limited in what they can ask, which is why human resources and those experts that work in human resources need to be the ones to put together these applications so that they don't run afoul of any of those specific, those rules, that they can't, they can't overstep what they're asking. But things like your name, your address, prior experience, right? What's your prior experience been? Your educational background. A lot of the things that you would maybe put on a resume would be also things that would be listed on a job application. So that application for employment, like I said, that would be managed by the Human Resources Department. They would be kept up to date on what the rules are, what the laws are for what they can ask and what they cannot ask. And they have to be very careful. So pre-hire inquiries can include questions about gender, national origin, criminal background, but only if there is a legit occupational reason for it. So for example, you could ask about criminal background if it's somebody that is going to be working in, let's say, law enforcement, right? And they're going to be, they're going to be carrying weapons. Criminal background is a legitimate question to ask about, and obviously that type of position would also have a background check associated with it. But if it does not directly pertain to the job, those questions really can't be asked.
I have a question. What if they are asked? Because I can assure you, I've been asked this at least 3 times on an application, and I'm a little appalled because I'm thinking, I'm shocked. So
Yeah.
is this a law?
Yes, this is the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Wow.
There would be legal recourse for
What
questions
actions
of that.
can you take if that happens? I'm not trying to go up, but I personally have been asked these questions on numerous accounts.
Well, it
and
would
I've had
probably
several
depend on whether
careers.
you've been harmed
No.
by those. Like if you didn't get the job as a result of the questions that were asked that are not legitimate. But I'm not a lawyer, so, but if I saw a question like that on an employment application asking me and some of them, some of the questions that you may be seeing are, they will ask you voluntary questions for equal employment opportunity questions, asking about your race or whether you're a veteran or things like that. Those are questions you do not have to answer. You're not required to answer them. Those are supposedly for collection of data to see who is, who's applying for these particular jobs. But if it was determined that a job was granted or not granted based on race or gender and there was no bona fide reason for it, that would be a problem, yeah.
So with that, I had declined to answer when I was trying to get a job at Buffalo Wild Wings a few years ago. And when I went in, he said that on his side, the management side, he was forced to put what I appeared to be by my skin color and by looking at me, what gender I was and all that. And he wasn't allowed to move forward with the employment process until he did that.
Wow.
So that's not okay, right?
I would question that. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer. I am not an attorney. So I can't give you advice on what exactly the procedure should be at that point. My ears would certainly perk up
Yeah. I
if
did work with
that occurred. So that's kind of, yeah. Like I said, employers, this is why they need people with legal backgrounds and in human resources to do it the right way so that they don't get in trouble. And a lot of employers do get in trouble. They get in trouble with all sorts of violations of these laws, and some of it is just pure ignorance. They're just completely unaware. But they have a responsibility to be aware of what these laws are. But the only reason they can ask those questions is if there's a bona fide occupational reason for it. They can perform background checks, but they have to be in compliance with this the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which essentially is the employee has to be informed and agree to that background check. If the employee doesn't agree, if they just perform a background check and the employee never agreed to it, that is not a valid background check. They can't do that. And of course, any background checks have to be in compliance with that act as well. Aptitude and psychological testing, again, can be done, but only if it's related to the job. So again, the example of law enforcement, individuals going into law enforcement who are going to be carrying weapons, obviously an aptitude or psychological test is probably a good thing to perform and is related to that particular job description. But other types of aptitude and psychological testing, it just depends on the job and whether it's appropriate for that particular position. As far as drug testing goes, it varies state by state. Some states allow it, some states don't allow it, and sometimes it's related to the position again, but that's just a state by state requirement. So some things that employers can do to prevent lawsuits, because this is a highly litigated area because of the mistakes that obviously are being made. Accepting applications only online. So like where you said that you had to, the manager said that he had to indicate what your demographic background appeared to be, which again is based on his perception, right? Could be completely wrong. If you accept an application only online, then you don't really know the background of the individual. You don't have that information, so you can maybe evaluate those applications in a little more even-handed manner. Having the person involved in interviews, having the person not involved in interviews process and review the application. So having a separation of powers there between those functions. You can imagine a situation where somebody, you have a friend who's in the human resources department, they tell you about this job and they kind of give you a leg up. If they're the ones that are accepting the applications and reviewing them as well as doing the interview, then you might have that individual might have an unfair advantage. So having more than one person involved in that. And then also there is certain applicant screening software that can be used, and AI these days obviously can be used in this manner as well, to just kind of take the human error out of it. Not that it can't, software and AI is obviously prone to error as well, but just kind of takes that human element out of it. So some states require a formal job offer to be extended before asking about your salary history. Has anybody been asked about prior salary on an application? You ever filled out an application and they say, what was your prior salary? Why do you think they're asking that?
So that they kind of know how much to pay you.
Yeah, but should it really be based on what your prior salary is? No, it should be based on what the job requirements are for this particular position, right? So there are some states, I don't think Iowa is one of them, where you can't ask that question on the application. The individual has to be hired first before they find out, and offered a salary before they find out, yeah.
Is it still like a law or a rule that when checking references, you can only verify employment dates?
So that is not a federal law, but
Okay.
the reason that employers do that, so what she's referring to is when checking references, oftentimes prior employers will only give dates of hire and termination. They won't give they won't like say, oh, she was a great employee, or oh my gosh, she never showed up on time, we had all these problems. They won't give that specific information because they're afraid of being sued. If the individual doesn't get the job, or they do get the job and the new employer finds out they're a poor fit, they might go back to that prior employer and say, well, you gave us this reference. It didn't match what the actual performance was. So a lot of employers, in order to save any question, they will tell individuals or companies that are asking for references, we only give dates of hire and termination, which is essentially useless information, really, other than verifying that yes, the person did work here, which I guess can be valuable because people lie about that, where they worked. But that it's not against the law to do that. It's just that employers are trying to protect themselves by doing that. And that's all we're going to say.
So they wouldn't verify salary either.
No. If I were, and I don't know if there's a specific law against doing that. I would certainly, if I were an employer who used to employ somebody who's now getting a reference, I would not give that information unless I had a signed release form from that prior employee saying I can give that information out. Even then, it would make me nervous. I wouldn't want to, I mean, that's very personal information. And then any employment applications do need to be kept on hand for at least a year. References, so we've already kind of just discussed this. There's a lot of litigation. Respondents, and the book advises this, that respondents only verify facts and don't offer any subjective information. So dates of hire, dates of termination, that sort of thing. It reduces the value of those references, right? Plus, I mean, are you gonna ask somebody to be a reference who's gonna give you a bad reference? No. I mean, it's, you know, references, although a lot of places still do them, they have limited value, really, those references. Another form that the Human Resources Department will use, so a hiring notice, that will be generated by the hiring department. So again, our example of the bookkeeper, the accounting department issues a hiring notice to alert, or I'm sorry, I was thinking of the requisition notice. The hiring notice actually is issued by the Human Resources Department. It's just to give the payroll department all the information of the new hire. So they can put in all of the, once somebody has been hired, put in all of their, put their name in, put their date of birth, social security number, all that personal information, very personal information, in order to get them into the payroll system. Employee history records, so this would be like the payroll file that each employee would have. Again, we're talking about mostly mid to large size companies. Smaller companies may or may not have these. They should have some sort of employee file that is secure. It belongs to the employer, but the employee has the right to access their personnel files. So this would contain like their evaluations, their anytime they get a raise, information about that, any disciplinary issues that have happened. Employee has to have access to that. Termination of employees, again, they talk about here, termination of an employee may be at will or for good cause only, depending upon the situation, also depending upon the jurisdiction and the state that they're in. Iowa is what we call, I just said the terminology, a right to work state, which is kind of a misnomer. Right to work sounds like everybody has the right to work. Actually, that's not what it means. It means kind of the exact opposite, and that you don't have the right to work. That you can be fired for any reason. You can be terminated for, the employer doesn't really have to have a reason for terminating you. They could just be downsizing, they could, they can't do it for discriminatory purposes, obviously, but, so they don't like the look of your face anymore, that sort of thing. But they don't have to necessarily have a reason for terminating, unless you have a contract. If you have a written contract, which extends for a certain period of time, then they would at least have to honor the pay in that contract. But for individuals who don't have a contract, they have, there's really not a whole lot of protection, unless you could prove it was for discriminatory purposes. Another form, so change in payroll rate, would notify when somebody's compensation changes, if they get a raise, or a bonus or something like that. That would be then issued to the payroll department, so they know to pay that individual. So the record keeping system, so these are just things that would be in that personnel file and the payroll file. So it's different types of files that would contain different information. Personnel is just basic information. Payroll file, anything pertaining to payroll, salary, benefits, that sort of stuff. Information, medical file, I'm not sure you want to call it medical file, but information on insurance and that sort of thing. So, medical, dental, insurance, that stuff. I-9 form, this is super important that employers keep these I-9 forms. That's the form that pertains to the Immigration Reform and Control Act. We're gonna go into a little bit more detail about that form because that's a new hire form that employers do have to keep on hand in case they get audited in case ICE comes in and audits the employer and needs that information. Let's see. I already mentioned the fact that it is the property of the employer, but employees have the right to view their file. Let's see. All right, we're gonna move on to talk about the payroll system. Anybody have any questions? So it's just kind of an overview of human resources, you know, what their function is from start to finish. Everything from here on in we're gonna talk is payroll specific.